Striking and paring gouges. So basically hitting and pushing. A lot of times that's just straight equated to roughing tool and finish tool, but that's not always how it goes. And really the tool can tell us a lot about how it's going to work. So if we look at their handle construction and then we look at how the edge is built, it can tell us a lot about how that tool is meant to be used. But let's get into a little bit about how we look at a tool and decide what we're going to use it for. So we've got the tang, the socket. The Swiss maids are made with a shoulder. So that shoulder helps to take some of the blow or when you're using it with a mallet. Of course, when you're paring, it doesn't matter as much, but it just helps for them to be able to mass produce it and for it to be a little bit stronger, so it helps absorb some of that shock. And with the socket, it's constructed different so that the metal piece is accepting the wooden handle, so that that metal piece, unlike the tang, the metal piece isn't being driven into that wooden handle, so it can absorb a lot more of the blow and it can handle a lot heavier of work, which is why it's typically used with the hoop gouge and used with a lot of roughing work. They are also, of course, more expensive to manufacture, so you don't see them as often, or if you do, it comes with a bigger price tag because it's worth it. So handle construction isn't just about comfort, although that is a part of it. A lot of it can be utilitarian as well. So with the Swiss maids, they have this sort of heavily faceted handle shape to them. That's really great in terms of grip and comfort, because when you have these little facets and the high points of the facets to hold on to, it doesn't as easily shift in your hand. And what that results in is less over gripping, because usually you're using this for a long period of time. And if you're over gripping, then that really starts to hurt your hands. So with something like this that's rounded, you tend to have to over grip that in order to get the traction that you need. It's also easy for that to sort of roll around in your hand. And so it's easier to reference when you're trying to use different parts of the edge. It's easier to reference to know how far you've turned the handle, because you can feel those ridges in your grip. There's also a really simple function, is that they don't roll off your benches easily. This one would be considered a palm tool. You can see how short that handle is in comparison to my hand, and it fits right in there. Then shorter handled tool like this Henry Taylor are meant for paring. Of course, you could lightly tap this if you wanted to. It could probably sustain some light blows. It does have another hoop right here, so, and a shoulder on that tang, so it's meant to sustain a little bit, but it's telling us a few different things. Is that it has a short handle, so there's not a lot of leverage involved with using this. And it's also a small tool, so typically you're not, just by the way it's made, it's just not going to take a huge chip away. So you know that more often than not this is going to be used for paring, and more often paring is used in the finishing process. So I guess that brings me to the second thing of that paring doesn't always have to be part of the finish process. It can also be part of the roughing process. So yes, you will be using larger tools to remove larger portions of wood when roughing, but sometimes it also calls for paring where there's like hard to reach spots, or you just want to remove a small amount of material. So you don't have to use these huge tools in order to remove a very small amount of material. I just need bigger edges to take away larger amounts of material. So you can already see the difference between these and that small Henry Taylor. And also the handles look a bit different. They're larger, they're longer. And so we have that hooped gouge, like the Japanese style firmer chisels that I use, and those are meant to sustain heavy blows. And then also the Swiss maid has this as well, but this is a different sort of unmarked one I got from the tool barn. And it has the hoop down here, but then also this big rounded over handle. And that also helps it from fraying. Not to say that a few of these haven't over time, and I can trim them even more, but having them rounded like that actually helps quite a bit in them not fraying. You can also add a hoop later on if it starts to fray like that. It is a little bit harder with these heavily faceted handles, but it's possible. Resistance is also an important factor to consider. When I'm doing sculptural things or just larger work, larger bowls, and I'm looking to hog away a lot of waste very quickly, I am looking at larger tools. So this is actually a Henry Taylor sculpture gouge. And you can see it's just, I mean, this is a 11, probably 20 Swiss made, and this huge Henry Taylor. And of course you can see the sweep on this is really low. And so what's going to happen is that this edge is going to engage more wood with that cut than it would on the steep sweep of something like this. And so this is going to pass through the wood a lot easier than this would. This is going to take an extreme amount of force to move it through. And it's got the double hooped, it's got a piece of leather, it has the shoulder. Like, it's meant to sustain really heavy blows because of the way that it's made, and because it has this really shallow sweep and it's large. It's going to take, all those things are pointing in the direction of lots of force need to be applied. So you can just take one look at this and know what it's used for. So you can kind of see here how these are all from the mallet and the gouge. You can see these lines across here where the mallet has sort of ended its blow and the gouge has stopped. And then when it starts again, it sort of creates that tick mark. Whereas over here, where I'm paring and I'm pushing the gouge, it's a lot smoother. So remember, there aren't really any incredibly hard, staunch rules in terms of when to use a paring gouge and when to strike a gouge with a mallet, but you want to just be mindful of how that tool is constructed, what you're using it for, if you're going to be doing damage to the tool by the way you're using it, or if you can get by with sort of using it for both things. And if you're having trouble using the paring gouge, you probably need to switch to the striking gouge. And if you're having trouble getting control by only removing a small amount of material with a striking gouge, then you probably need to move to a paring gouge. Sometimes that just means the same tool used differently for me. So I could be holding one tool and pushing it and paring and being like, this is way too much work, I need to switch it up, I need a mallet. And I'll go back and forth between, you know, one little section, just depending on how much material I'm looking to remove. So be kind to your body. If your body's telling you this ain't working, do something different. It's really that simple. And you just gotta get in tune with that. Can you dig it?